This is Resonance, a podcast for leaders that unpacks the power of song, silence, and strategy.
We believe that great leadership begins with deep listening, not just to others, but to the still small voice within.
It's not just about being a successful leader, it's about being soulfully aligned as well.
In a world moving fast, Resonance invites you to pause and reconnect with purpose, people, and possibility.
We'll dive into some cool stories, celebrate with friends, and dig deep into the music too. 'Cause song has a way of saying what words cannot alone.
So whether you're leading a business, a team, or just trying to lead your own life with more meaning, this is Resonance.
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 Welcome to Resonance, the podcast that combines the magic of music and song and strategy all in one. Mike Ferrell, the monk guy, with some new books coming out soon. Very excited about that. And Steve Azar with, I think, more albums coming out soon. Excited about that. And I know you've been working on all kind of stuff. So I'll be excited to hear what that's all about. And me, I'm Randy Harrington. And today we're going to be talking about that wonderful experience we've all seen and had ourselves, where things are going along pretty well. And then somewhere along the way, the leader begins to feel like, well, maybe it's not going as well as I like it to be. And there's a lack of confidence that begins to emerge. And suddenly our leader, who has taken us all the way out on the edge of this limb, feels at a loss. They feel like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? It's a terrible, lonely feeling to find yourself as a leader in that spot, because you don't want to give away that you don't know what the heck is going on necessarily, but at the same time, you know you're going to need some help. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I'm going to open us up with the idea that really there's probably one of two worlds that's going on there. One is that there's a good chance, for me particularly, that I've become profoundly distracted by something. I've decided that AI is the way to save my company. And so now I'm just thinking all about AI all the time. And that's all I want to do. And it's taking me down a path that's actually pulling me away from what the company is really all about, from the values and goals that we had established. So there could be something external to the leader that is drawing that leader's attention away and pulling them off of script. Or it could be internal. I'm not listening to my own heart as a leader. I'm not paying attention to myself. I'm not listening to that inner voice, as Mike Ferrell likes to say, that should be telling me what's going on. Maybe I've suppressed that for reasons I'm not clear on. But whatever it is, there's nothing worse than seeing that hapless leader who was maybe a year ago clicking on all cylinders, and now all of a sudden things are moving a little slower, or they're making choices that don't seem to make as much sense, or somebody's doing something wrong and there's no accountability for it, or somebody's done something amazing and there's no reward for it, right? You just start seeing the feedback systems in the organization don't make sense anymore. And so what do we do to diagnose it, fix it, and move on? And how natural is this to happen? What do you think, Mike?
I think the other side, that inner side, the other piece of that is a lot of times some of that's happened because the leader has decided to sort of rest on their own laurels.
There you go.
They've the ego has taken over and they've decided that they know better than everybody else. They've seen some success. And so now they think it's all about them. And therefore they begin to make questionable decisions. They begin to stop listening. They begin to stop trusting their team. And I think when they get into those kinds of situations, as things begin to unravel, then they begin to lose confidence. They begin to lose this idea of how can I, as a leader, get this back? And of course, the first thing that they think of is control. I got to take more control. And Steve, I know you've seen a lot of this in the music business, so I'll kick it over to you and let you talk a little bit about what you've seen.
I have to sit down for a little while before we even go there. I need to go arm myself real quick. You bring that up, and it's interesting because there's so many more good people than the ones that do bad things, right? Or that bad things, in my opinion, that are bad things in a lot of our opinions. So it's not just my opinion. There's been multiple episodes documented very well. It's just, you get these certain leaders that are so insecure at some point. I think some of it's substance abuse. I hate to say it, whether you like it or not. The greater and more powerful they get, the more they're drinking, the more they're doing other things, and they're not good at all with it, nor anybody else. So, but the bottom line is that all of a sudden now you've not only got a person leading, but they're not even all there, right? And then they make decisions when they're not capable of making decisions, and they sometimes thrive on breaking hearts. They live for it, and they live for taking credit for the things that are working, to the point of firing anybody that had anything to do with it, so they can be the sole one standing, and then blame anything that goes wrong on everybody else. And I have witnessed this, and I'm only going to tell you, I can do it on one hand, right? But compared to the ones that have been doing it right and doing it ethically and doing it with the concern of everybody else in mind, those are the ones I've always drawn to. But I'm telling you, the good news is the significant amount that are in the plus column for me way outnumber the smaller number on one hand in the negative column that just were a waste of space, and they weren't that good at leading at all. We're looking, especially after talking to you guys and getting to know you guys, I wasn't so crazy at all. A lot of my friends weren't so crazy at all, because they could make you feel like that you were just out of your mind a lot of times.
The word is hubris, Hubris, again from the Greek, and the Greek terminology of it, hubris. Right now, hubris means I'm all that in a bag of chips, is what that means. It means I think it's just what you were talking about, Azar. Yeah. It's like, look at me, I'm the best. Why are you even here? I'm just going to walk in here and tell you what to do, even though maybe I don't even know what I'm doing, but I'm just that cool that I can get away with this. I don't even know what I'm doing, but I can do it anyway. And,
what kind
yes,
of chips do they get, Randy?
Pardon me?
What kind of chips do they get?
Oh, Mike, I swear I was thinking the same thing. I didn't want to interrupt because he was on a roll, but I'm glad you said that.
Back in the day, the term often meant that you were prone to violence, or another use of the term was you were considered, hubris was to say that you had more power than the gods in the Greek world. It was when you would say, oh, well, I'm smarter than Zeus, or whatever it was back in the day. So hubris is about claiming for yourself more power and influence than you've actually got. And as a result of that, you begin doing these foolish things. But what's required, of course, is that the culture reinforces that they go, oh, well, you're the boss.
Right.
If you want to, set this on fire, then you go ahead. And so that's where these relationships begin to fall down. It's not just in the individual. And I guess this is what I'm trying to get to, is it's really easy, I think, for people to say that a leader is a crappy leader because they're all full of themselves. And I would say, yeah, that's true. But we created that crappy leader.
Yeah,
exactly.
We have created the conditions where that can happen. And most of the time, this is because somewhere along the line, either the leader or we decided we didn't want to share negative information. That seemed to be the one thing that really starts this spiral of doom going. When negative information doesn't flow to the leader's desk or isn't digested appropriately by that leader, then they begin to think, oh, I'm doing really good. Everything must be going well. Everything must be going well.
Yeah.
And then they begin to believe the story that everything is going well more than they believe the evidence that things are not going well.
Right. You got me thinking about songs that when I was under the midst and the fog and the cloud and the storm of this time in my life, my songs that I was writing were jabs, constant jabs at that. And the lyrics reflected it. It was bring it on and all that. And once I had a pastor friend that lived next door to us in Franklin, Tennessee. And he came in my house one day and he said, I want to talk to you. I said, what? He goes, we've been together at some nice dinners and stuff. Something is on your heart. Something's heavy on your heart. And so I told him some things that were going on. And he said, you're mad and you're sad. He touched me, touched my head, touched my heart. Now let go of the rope. And I said, what? He goes, you've been playing tug of war. And I think maybe we've discussed this in another episode, but you've been playing tug of war so long with that and that person or that thing that's making you feel sick inside. And he goes, if you drop the rope, there's at some point, they're going to realize there's nobody tugging on the other side. And that's when you start to forgive. And so at that point, after calling my buddy James House, and we were on a series of writing a bunch of songs, and James graced over, and I told him exactly that story. We wrote this song in no time. And after writing Let Go of the Rope and getting it out there, and I noticed in my writing that I didn't have the angst or the anger or the I'm going to get you, I'm in the boxing ring, here we go, I'm not the underdog, and David versus Goliath and all this. I really started writing some things that made me feel good, and it was an incredible transformation and from that place, because the more I wrote about those things that were making me feel good, the better I felt. I mean, trust me, it was a physical thing. When I tell you I was physically sick, and the feeling that I had lasted about a year and a half, I'm telling y'all that when I learned to do that and get on the other side of it, I became insides felt like $1 million. And so after that, I learned to pray for these people. They're in my prayers rather than hate them, or at least not respect them. I hate to use the word hate.
Right.
I hope I've never hated anybody in my life.
Right.
But disrespect them and go, you affected a lot of things that were supposed to happen, and that not just in my life, but in people around me in my life, my band, my you affected them, my family. And so I took it personal for those reasons. But with that said, I realized why I should be grateful. Also went out on my own, and it was the best thing I could have ever done for every reason in my career, from financially to my art form and becoming an honest, better writer, because I didn't have time anymore to try to figure it out. I just had to make it real and honest. And at that point, it was time to be that, and not worrying about making sure it was exactly this long and making sure I just needed to do what was in my heart. So I almost stumbled back on the past of my life when I didn't know how to do any of it, where I had no mentors. I had no, all the times of writing and trying to get it right. And after hits and all that, I literally went back to my childhood when I just started doing it. And that's how I felt when I was writing again. But I had all this knowledge of how to do it, but I didn't have to think about doing it, nor did I have any rules anymore. And so still to this day, in the morning, I have them in my prayers and in my mind. And as I'm praying for them, right after, those are the people that pushed me forward, even though they were trying to not push me forward. They gave me this drive. And then I am grateful for the people that always pushed me forward and were always positive in my life, and think I would have never visualized them ever if I didn't think about the negativity. And then you think about the ones that were so positive, that changed your life in such a positive direction. They all mattered in the equation, and they all were pivotal in the equation. And so I guess that's
what's
all
important in that story is your intentionality with regards to how you dealt with those things. I also like the rope metaphor. It's used widely in a lot of spiritual writing.
Right.
It's certain the rope is a big part of Buddhist thinking as well. There's a line in a Goose song that I like very much. The line is, hope, it's bent like rope, and I'm growing tired of hauling on yesterday.
wow.
And that line, I always thought, just, wow, that's a really, because you can just feel the person pulling, nothing's coming though. Nothing's coming. And I like this idea of drop the rope, just let go of the rope. The Buddhist monks that were just finished their walk for peace. One of the conversations that was happening there was this idea of, they use the metaphor of a rope that's on fire. And so I'm going to hand you this burning rope, and all you need to do is just not take it. You just need to then it's going to go the other way. It's not, you do not need to hold on to that. You do not need to carry it. And so I like this idea very much, that big part of being a strong leader is learning what to hold on to and what to put down.
Right.
What to let go of. And it's just about that simple. And it needs to be, and this is what I'm getting out of your conversation, Steve, is that needs to be a daily meditation. This isn't something, I would think, I maybe should do that every year. No. What you're saying is it needs to be.
It's very helpful. I got to tell you, it gets my day going in a very positive direction. I feel good about myself. My mom and dad used to beg me to pray for the people that they felt were disruptive in my life. And I go, why would I want to do that? I want to strangle them.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, metaphorically, I'm speaking, but I would like to get in the ring with them and take them on. But they said that is going to wear you out in your lifetime. And I had great people, mentors around me going like, Steve, as competitive as you are, that competitive spirit needs to move on and take a back seat for a minute, because these are the things that they won't push you forward. So you got to let go of it. It was just him that said it so perfectly. And just the way he touched me, right? My heart, my mind, and my
Yeah,
heart.
yeah.
The way he said it, it was like he was preparing. I mean, like I was waiting for years, for this man to come do this and say that. And it hit me like I mean, like it was so inspirational. And I stay in touch with him. Beautiful, beautiful soul, smart theologian, smart guy.
Well, you
Smart
were
guy.
open to it though, too.
Yeah,
That's the
Right,
thing.
right.
Well, I was starving for something,
Yep, and
I was, yeah.
yeah, I think Randy, you made this word intentional. I think again, it's one of my monk principles, intention, and in part of intention is what I call a clarity of purpose. And I think when leaders get off the reservation and get in their own way and think it's all about them, they lose that clarity of purpose, and they lose the whole reason why they're doing what they're doing in the first place. And I think that's
Right.
a real challenge for a leader to be able to come back to that clarity of purpose, to really understand and ask the question, number one, why am I doing what I'm doing, or why we as a business or an organization doing what we're doing? And then the second part of that question is, why have we strayed from it? Why have we moved away from it? And what's happened here? But again, we talked, we've talked multiple times on this show about humility. Until they get to the point where they can accept the idea of humility, it's virtually impossible for them to go back and ask that question. Until they can. And so it's something like, Steve, it's like you had with him, it's a tipping point. It's one of those things that say, I've got to do something because something's off here. And unfortunately, a lot of times, especially leaders where there's a lot of ego involved and that kind of thing, by the time they figure that out, it's too late. And either they've been moved out by somebody, or the organization is crashing and burning. And that's a hard part for the leader.
Do you think that the leader wants that a lot of this is that person is who they are, and they were nurtured a certain way, and they saw certain things a certain way, and at some point when they got to this certain point, that was going to show itself, and that was going to be the person you're now dealing with because of the word power, and because of the word being proud, and because of those things, all of a sudden they become invincible, and then they draw upon their past somewhere that's who they really are. And so can they camouflage who they really are during this process of getting to a certain point, and then all of a sudden they take off the mask and the charade and all and the costume, and all of a sudden there that person is, who is that? Who's that person that's been leading us forever, that's fooled us? How is that possible?
Right.
Well, you're speaking to the power of narrative for sure. So I like to think about military brats are thing. I've been cleaning out closets, and it's interesting. And you have the same closets where you can go in your closet and you can find that chunk of books from that chunk of time, chunk of pictures where you did that thing for a period of time. And then, then I went and did this other thing. And then I went to this other place and did this other thing. And so you really do find yourself, what's that line in Bittersweet Symphony? I'm a million different people from one day to the next, right? And I don't know if I'm a million different people, but I'm certainly probably 28 or 34. And the point is that when you go back and you look at your life, you're a very different person when you were 11. You're a very different person when you were 19. There were some things that were consistent, but what you were interested in, what you cared about, what you valued, what you would have really been upset about when you were 19 is probably very different than what you'd be really upset about now.
I get that.
Right. We are all these different people all the time. And I think what happens with leaders is they begin telling themselves a story that turns them into a statue, that actually they build the prison that's going to kill them because all they're doing is putting up these constraints that are going to direct their ability to lead moving forward. This is the way it's going to be. This is the way I am. This is the way it is. Well, that's all assuming the world isn't going to change. And I don't know if y'all are looking, but the world ain't paying any attention to what you think. The world is changing rapidly. So leadership now doesn't have the luxury of being able to go, I know everything, I'm ready to go,
Right.
with any kind of credibility. Right. And smart people these days, if your leader is saying that, should be going, I think you got a little hubris going on there. I think you got
Yeah.
I think you got your ego, got your head is in an incorrect orifice for right. As we have to be smart about who we follow.
Right.
And so, and this, I guess, to me, the punchline here is when you find that person is like, this is it. This is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Unless that person's able to really directly prove it, I would be very skeptical. I'm going to be much more preferred to follow the person who's going, I'm not exactly sure what we're going to find, but I think we've got, no matter what we're going to find, we can do this or we can do that or we can do this. So let's try it and see what we learn. That's the leader I'm going to be interested in right now, not the one who's, look at me, I'm fantastic.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think the other piece of that too is not only what the leader is doing as the leader, but what's the leader doing in regards to their people. How do they make their people feel? How do they make their people matter? I'd be much more inclined to follow a leader who I feel like knows I'm important. I'm not just a cog in the wheel. They know I'm important versus somebody that says, I'm going to just tread through people, and it doesn't matter. As you had mentioned earlier, Steve, they're going to get rid of the ones that aren't going to give them all the credit and do all the work and then get rid of them. I mean, I think it's from a leadership perspective, when they lose that perspective that they're only at the top because of the people underneath them that have gotten them there. But when they lose that perspective that says, I can't do this without you, then I think that's when they get to that point where now it becomes about them. Now they're exercising this idea of hubris, and they've got everybody out on the limb, and everybody's on the limb, and they're all looking at the thing and saying, this limb ain't going to hold up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe I better bail.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. I think you look at folks around you in a work environment or in any environment, right? And they got to see it coming, right? And we've also been around long enough to see people that do it the right way, that care about the people in the organization. They never are thinking about themselves, and it's me, right? It's all about them and everyone involved. And I think that those are the leaders that stick and they stay around, and the other ones are flashes in the pan because it's just not going to work. It's not a good environment for people to be involved in. It's not healthy. We're not talking about that.
Right.
I think we're going to dive into that in another episode about feeling healthy with where you are. I just think that that's important when folks around you start to feel like, man, we're on the Titanic, and this is going to go down because you've lost your mind and you're not the same person that you were 3 years ago.
Right.
And we need that person right now. That's the person we need, not the person that somehow you've become or you were and you fooled us. Regardless, either way, I'm sounding like a broken record right now because I know I'm repeating myself, but that's very, very interesting to me. But I think, the bottom line is, how is everybody feeling when all this is going down? I think great leaders just need to be patient, and they need to have empathy and compassion at the same time of taking care of business. I mean, it's very important, right? That's why they're there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And sometimes you do have to have a stern, way of doing things. And sometimes you do have to reprimand, and sometimes you have to deal with stuff like that. But I also think there's a way you can do that where it's more effective for everybody, and the outcome's going to be better.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Almost every client I've ever worked with, one of the questions that I always have for them is, what are you doing to make your people better?
Yeah.
And the typical response is, well, we've got this training program and we've got this opportunity, we've got this. And then I stop them right there and I said, I'm not talking about your programs or your training or anything like that. What are you, the leader, doing to make your people better? And then I get silence.
Well, I'm playing
Because they haven't,
I
they
like the
haven't thought
question.
about it.
How are your leaders sharpening each other?
Exactly.
That's the one, how are you building that sense of improvement from the sides, not from the top down or the bottom up? But yes, it's a huge question. And it gets to the bigger issue that when a leader has decided that they're in control, that's where the delusion begins. Because they're really in control of very little. And it's much more about being responsive to an enormously complex environment out there. So one of the things that I encourage leadership teams to do is to really zoom out, have some period of time where they zoom out, where they despecialize themselves for a minute and they start thinking about the much larger picture. For example, I do a lot of work with financial institutions, and just the simple question of, you think your financial institution is the most important thing in the world, but your customers don't. They don't even want to think about you, likely. You're a pain in their butt. You are an errand that they have to run. You're a thing that comes in the mail. You're something that's an annoyance. And you're talking about
You're a
partnership.
button they have to push.
Yeah, exactly. You are.
You
So
guys are y'all trying to both be songwriters right now? Is that what's happening?
sure. Why not? That'd be great.
Well,
Throw me a vote.
we were taught by the best, so
Not true. Not true. The least. But no, keep going, Randy. I'm sorry. That I get what you're saying there. That's yeah.
So what you end up with then is this feeling that I have to, as a leader, be okay and on the record with not knowing everything all the time. And what's remarkable is the leaders who do that end up getting so much more joy and support and compassion for what they're doing. And the other thing they end up doing is opening up the potential of the people that are their direct reports.
Yeah, man. There's a power in that.
Yeah. So I'm always looking, when I go and look at a leader, I actually will look at a leader for about 2 seconds and go, yeah. Because what they've figured out is how to put themselves together.
Yeah.
I'm the leader. I'm presenting myself to you this way, and I'm really good at it because I've done it for 10 years. And I'll go, okay, that's fine. But now I'm going to look at the people that report to you, and I'm going to ask, are these people operating at an unfolded sense of potential? Or are they operating with one arm tied behind their back because they know they're not allowed to use that arm or whatever? And so when I start seeing the direct reports to the leader being hamstrung in some way, then I'm not going to go complain about them. I'm not going to go, oh, well, your CFO's an idiot because he can only use one arm and not the other. I'm going to go back to the leader and I'm going to say, what's going on?
Yeah.
Well, let me just say this. To me, the word pressure is you got me starting to think about this. Leaders that do things that do see side to side and not from the top down and see, and take advantage of the people that are there to have these ideas and come together as a true team are the ones that handle the pressure the most when the goings are rough.
Yeah.
So, but then the ones that have taken this burden on their own because it's about me, when things go south a little bit, they handle pressure in such an awful way. And that probably, all of a sudden the volcano blows, right? So I think that pressure, right? Pressure
is huge.
be a big part of this?
Constraints are the way. This is the Toyota lesson, right? The constraint is the way. When you run into a problem in a Toyota plant, people get excited. They're like, all right.
Yeah.
Now let's form this problem because that's going to lead us to another level of potentiality. Instead of going, oh gosh, or hiding the constraint or pushing it away, the constraint is the way. And if you follow this out in the research, what you end up with is the reality that anything that you're doing that isn't tackling the substance of the constraint is delusional. It's a waste. If the constraint is what's blocking you from doing this other stuff, but you're doing all this other stuff that isn't dealing with the constraint, then what are you doing?
Randy, say that one more time before not only our guests, but me as well.
So the constraint is the way. And what that means is that if you're working on something that doesn't impact or affect the constraint, then your work is delusional. Then all you're doing is reinforcing that constraint.
Gotcha.
There may be reasons that has to happen, if, for example, but they become speculative and it's worthless. But the primary piece is understanding where the bottlenecks are in any kind of a situation. And bottleneck is a manufacturing concept, right? But if you think about it more openly, it still works. You have bottlenecks in your marriage, for example. You have those places where the river narrows really tightly. And it's like, ugh. And what happens when that river narrows? Well, the water runs faster and it's more dangerous and treacherous, right? So the basic idea is to understand constraint theory and not see it as a bad thing, but see it as an absolutely normal thing. If you go drive in Southern California or any big city and you see that they've got some places 10-lane freeways going both directions and the traffic is still terrible. Why is that? Well, the primary reason is because of the on-ramps and off-ramps. If you want to change the traffic flow, it is the on-ramps and off-ramps that will make the biggest difference, much more so than the number of lanes. that are there.
Yeah.
Makes sense, because that's the constraint
Right.
where people want to get off. So all I'm saying is, when you have a leader who thinks they can control everything, they're typically not acknowledging the constraints. They're not excited to see the constraint. They see the constraint as a threat as opposed to an opportunity to move them forward. And that little bit of kung fu, that little pivot,
Yeah.
will really change a leadership team.
I love that. Hey, Mike, what
Yeah.
about like your principles when it comes to humility and intention, stability, profound hospitality? Leaders, how can they regain perspective, and where do they come in? Especially the word humility for me. I feel like, well, you just can't go buy it at the store and go, now I've got humility, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so you're dealing with something that has to be built inside you and innate.
Yeah.
So what about humility?
Well, and it's interesting. I mean, yes, humility has to be innate, but on the other hand, humility is something that can be practiced. And that's what St. Benedict wrote about. Chapter 7 in the Rule, the longest chapter in the Rule, are the 12 steps or his ladder of humility. And each step builds upon the next. And so humility isn't something that we just do. Humility is something that we practice. It's a virtue. And therefore, in order for a virtue to become a virtue, as Aristotle would say, we have to practice it. We have to use it. We have to constantly take it out for a walk. And that idea of humility is so important, because if we're not exercising it, any of us can stand there all day long and say we're humble. But if it's not being shown in our actions, in the things that we do, in the way that we treat people, in the conversations that we have, then it becomes hollow. It becomes worthless. And so that idea of humility, and I think it is one of the most critical elements. I talk about it, teach it, coach on it all the time. It's one of the most critical elements of any leader, is that humility is probably, I think humility and my favorite word, magnanimity, those two are two of the most important virtues that any leader can have, because it's all about others, number one, and then it's all about seeing the greatness in others. And talk about the difference between hubris and magnanimity. Hubris, I see the greatness in myself, and it's all about me and a bag of chips, as Randy would say.
Yeah.
And magnanimity is all about seeing it in everybody else and multiple cases of chips. So,
Yeah. Magnanimity. What is it?
Magnanimity.
Magnanimity would be the equivalent of Susu Studio as a song. And also, let me just say this, our culture personality, let's give some people, you brought up humble. I think plenty of people get humbled that aren't humble. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Welcome to the wonder they're not prepared for it, and how they react to that is interesting. But to me, how do you convince somebody to go and spend all this time, 12 steps of humility, and to gain this virtue and make it a part of your life, which is so important, right? So important. And I know I'm not perfect at it. I can tell you right now, there's plenty of prideful moments I'm not proud of, right? Be it when situation, but how do you get somebody that's where they are at this point as a leader, and they're not doing anything right at this point in the eyes of everybody else? How do you get them to even take the time to do the 12 steps?
Well, a lot of times it's they've been humbled.
They got to be so humble, right?
Yeah, I mean, you see two. I see two different types of leaders. A lot of times, I see those that have been humbled, and now they're trying to find out what happened, and that's why they've come to me, and that's why they want to work with me, because they're trying to figure out how to get back what they had at one point.
Nice.
Then you've got the other type of leader that exercises humility a lot, but wants to be better at it, wants to be a better leader, wants to be better working with their teams, wants to create a better organization. Those are the leaders that are doing it because, and the Benedictines have this idea of lifelong learning. And when a leader understands that they have to continually learn, and I know, Randy, you talk about this as well, ongoing learning and understanding and contemplating and being, how do I be better, and how do I make my people better? Those are the types of leaders then that want to continue to go forward and want to get the help to do that. And then there's the third group of leaders that will never pick up a phone and call me or send me an email because they think they're well above whatever it is that that anybody around them thinks they are.
Yeah. I can tell
They're
y'all,
exercising hubris, and they don't want anybody to tell them something different.
oh yeah, you can forget it. You're out there, but
Yep.
it doesn't matter because I understand now why you two guys are so busy. The world needs leaders need both of y'all. I mean, that's a no-brainer.
Well, the truth of it is that when you are leading, you need feedback, and it is the way you deal with the feedback that will discern which of these ways you're going to go. So one of the things you can do is you can just really sort of check yourself with, how am I dealing with negative information? Do I get negative information? What do I do when I get negative information? And is it about praise or blame, or is it about fixing things in the future? I had an engagement with a client about a week ago, and he had a very horrible thing happen to him and his institution, his financial institution. And it was interesting to me because he clearly had a lawsuit he could have filed based on the problem that had happened. He could have gone full Rambo on this, and it would have been a thing. It would have been probably 2.5 years of very expensive, painful litigation. And instead, he essentially didn't confront them and just took the business over and then fixed it moving forward. So instead of, he took what would have been probably $10 million worth of legal fees and said, no, I'm just going to absorb that business and then make it better. And so I like this idea very much of solving problems in the future, of not making it this battle of praise and blame about a past fact, but moving the potential, creating potential in the future for what my favorite word now is optionality, to create optionality for that leader moving forward. So now I have more options than I did before, even though that you were trying to close one off. So the reality is that this business of hubris is blinding. You lose the ability to see because you've got this narrative filter on your head that has to make it all about you, an echo chamber making you the most important person. And when you lose that, all of a sudden you can begin to see much, much, much more clearly.
I love it.
Yeah, you've got your virtual glasses on, and all you're seeing is what's in the virtual glasses.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, so I think it is, and I think the other piece that I'm getting from you, Steve, out of all of this is the idea that this is not just some kind of esoteric philosophical way to think, but this is about a daily practice. This is about sort of waking up with that sense of humility on a daily
Very
basis.
helpful. Very
And
helpful.
finding ways to have that happen.
You have to remind yourself. This is a way of reminding, whatever the way is, you can remind yourself to think good thoughts about anyone. And then, and really praise the ones that have been so good to you, and thank those people in your mind and in your thoughts. I think that that's a wonderful thing. I mean, I just do. And it's been helpful for me as a songwriter. It's been helping me as a person, not in that order, so been important, and hopefully as a husband and a father and a friend, so those are the things you really cherish now as life goes by, right? And when we're on the other side of the middle of it, so now it's time to really buckle down, and man, it just makes you feel good.
It's a true story.
Yeah.
So
All right, Randy, bring us home.
Well, one of the things I'm going to suggest you do is as you go through your day for the next couple of days, if you have a chance to thank somebody or compliment somebody or tip somebody in a way that is really focused, not just like, oh, here's your tip, but wow, that the fact that you did that made so much of a difference to me. Really expressing and calling that out. In other words, put yourself in that one down position formally, just whenever you can. And it's amazing how as soon as you do that, you feel better. You get the benefit of that tip you gave them as much as they do. So I suggest that you guys look for that. And what that will do, reduce the hubris, allow you to have more vision. Vision leads to creativity and power. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And
include
on Resonant.
Include the folks around you that you've depended on for so long. Don't all of a sudden eliminate them because things got great, and give those folks the credit they deserve.
There it is. Another Resonance, friends. Look for us in all the places you get podcasts, and we so appreciate the fact that you folks tune in.
Yeah, we love it. We thank y'all for giving us the opportunity to spend time together.
ResonanceLeader.com. That's where you can find us. All right. Thanks, guys. And we will see you on the next show.
Thanks for listening to Resonance. Find us at resonanceleader.com.